Make that a boomerang.
Yep.
Welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. I am Cassie Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall. If you are wondering who are we to be analyzing these pros, I have about 23 years of training in solo and partner dancing, and Cassie has about 21. We aren't here to be judging anyone. We try to keep our opinions out of most of this, but we're more just here to look at the science of things and see what's actually happening between two people.
And tonight's topic is push breaks, otherwise known as sugar pushes. We've got two videos we're going to be analyzing. The first is John Lindo and Tori Zowie from Boogie by the Bay, and the second is a demo of Kyle Red and Sarah Van Drake from Mission City Swing. The links will be in the cards above. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you are always notified when an episode comes out. To the screen share! The beginning of this dance between John and Tori is super funny because John is choosing to make some editorial commentary about the whole swing content extravaganza. However, because of that, we have two very lovely sugar pushes to look at. Yeah. So this is the first one. Benji is very excited about the joke.
Yep. Are we surprised?
No.
No. So, kind of thing to look at is where he is like starting to cushion her for that compression.
Yeah, so it's right around count 2.
Mm-hmm.
Which is where he starts initiating the compression and cushioning the impact. A lot of teachers equate this to absorbing the energy like catching a raw egg. We go into great lengths about how that isn't entirely correct in our Patreon this month, how that's only part of the story. Because yes, we cushion the impact in West Coast Swing, but we then grow the force of the compression in order to redirect it. We don't dissolve it into nothing, which is what is needed to stop a raw egg without breaking it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's through this section right here where where they're growing the compression together.
Mm-hmm. And you can even see his hands go downward ever so slightly before he's sending her back out.
Yep, so the compression is starting here, and if we watch the hands, they move very little from that count 2 position. Just enough to absorb, but also grow the compression.
Yep.
And then redirect it.
And the other thing to note is, while he is doing it very stiffly, he is stepping forward as he's sending her back.
Yeah.
So it's not just the arms that are moving her back.
Yep.
Very important.
Okay, let's see if the second one in this sarcastic phrase has any variations. This time Forrest is very excited.
So is Melissa. Yep, very similar.
Very similar.
Tori compresses in a little bit more on this one.
Yeah, because she commits to her third weight transfer more in this version right here.
Yeah.
Than she did in the first one.
The first one, you can really see that she's basically like upright over herself for the most of it. There's really not much change in the pitch. But this one, you can see somewhat of a pitch change.
This is the first one for comparison.
Yeah. So you can see, rather than pitching forward, she is doing more of a check motion with her foot as she stays more upright.
But in the second one,
I just noticed what Benji did in the background.
yeah, but in this second one, she gets more into a forward pitch and commits more of her weight over that right foot.
Yeah. And you can see that
we're out of practice. This is what happens after 3 weeks. Anyways.
I was just going to say that you can see that extra pitch forward at the very end of that compression helps her move back a little bit more forcefully than the first one.
Mm-hmm. It also results in her leading backwards with her hips before her shoulders and having a little bit of a delay with her shoulders catching up to her hips. Anyways, John is now very proud of himself for finishing out his basic swing content phrase with an 8-count whip. So he is doing an exact 32 count phrase. And that's why everybody is so very, very, very excited. Anyways.
All of them.
All of them. It's fabulous. And for those of you who were present at Rose City Swing, happiest event on earth, or heard tales about it, it was one great big editorial swing content story, if y'all didn't catch that. So
yeah. Moving on.
This is what we really wanted to talk about this week, because Kyle is a master at modifying basic push break structure, and he's able to do that so beautifully with Sarah in particular because of the way she carries her frame.
Yeah.
So this particular video from a demo from Mission City Swing, I believe in 2019, has quite a few very interesting versions of sugar pushes. So that's why we wanted to talk about it.
Yes.
I will let you go first.
Okay. So coming into this first one here, we have what looks like just a normal shaped sugar push until we get to this point here. So what's happening is that Sarah's committing her weight in, compressing, but Kyle, rather than doing what we were just talking about and taking that energy and redirecting it, he is just dissipating it for a moment. So she's just hanging out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can see right before, because we have this stop, he's dissipated that energy. Before he sends her back, he has this slight movement where he moves the arm back a little bit, like ever so slightly, and then sends her back forward. So he has a little bit of prep because he stopped that energy.
Yep. So the way I think about this as a leader, so he enters it the same way as a normal sugar push. He collects and he gets that hand on count 2. So he's starting to cushion the impact. So it's not a jarring introduction to compression for Sarah. And he grows it like normal. So there's compression in the handhold here. But because Sarah is really committing to that and trusting him with it, he can now take this handhold further down the slot and she'll go with it. And that's what creates the weight assist shape of this. And then, like Alicia said, there's this moment here where they're just kind of hanging out in this moment. And Kyle adjusts where that hand is ever so slightly right here. And that's what's causing the change in shape of Sarah's hips.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the revving the engine again. So like there was already compression in that hand. It wasn't like completely dissolved. It's just that the momentum of it was dissolved, but the actual pressure of the compression was still there. And so by him initiating movement in the opposite direction of where he then wants it to go, that's basically bringing the compression back to a state that it can be used to redirect it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate how, as he drives through his left foot, he's maintaining his frame. So it's his body that's moving Sarah, and he doesn't start extending his arm until Sarah is getting further away from him.
Yeah. And just the other thing that I wanted to note with Sarah is once you see that she's kind of committing, she's going in for like a shaped sugar push of sorts. She's not moving any further forward with her feet. She's hanging out there, but like that upper part of her body is going more towards Kyle. And so she's starting to get this imbalance. So you can see the further that she's going, the more that that right foot is lifting up.
Mm-hmm. Thought of something else to talk about, but we could talk about that one sugar push all night. So we're going to move on to another one. And what I was about to talk about probably happened again. Next one. I have a lot of soapboxes when it comes to sugar pushes, so I'm going to try to keep it to one soapbox per example.
Yes. So once again, we have what's kind of coming in to look like a normal sugar push. And what it looks like is happening is that he is switching hands because he has like a really odd, like over the top handhold. So it looks like he's kind of switching back over on that right side. But as you can see, as soon as he's connecting that hand with Sarah, it's dropping, like that hand connection is dropping below her center. So then there's not really any like really strong compression happening, but it's sending that like momentum downward so that he can redirect it out.
Yep. And then what's really important to notice about that detail is if, let's say, as soon as they get the hand here, if Kyle were to pull her left hand straight down at this point,
Mm-hmm.
it would result in her accelerating forward and falling down into the floor. So it's relaxing downwards because she's getting close enough for her arm to relax down.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a really important distinction. You don't pull down into that as a tall follow. And yes, we will have a tall follow panel sometime in the future, but it's a very important detail. And then I also want to note that one of the ways he is allowing them to close the distance between each other so easily is where he places his right foot for count 2. So he's not traveling down line with his right foot here. He actually went laterally and maybe like half a floorboard closer to Sarah. So that way when he completes his weight transfer onto this right foot and shapes to his left, which brings his right shoulder towards her, he's closer to her. So she didn't have to close that whole distance all by herself. He was making it a little bit easier for her, which is super important since she has shorter legs than he does.
Mm-hmm.
Signature tongue sticking out. Excellent. I really appreciate throughout this whole dance how often Kyle switches what orientation their slot is.
I know.
Just as a small aside, but like, I love that so much.
Yeah. It makes the dance very dynamic, very interesting.
Onward.
So here we're coming into just kind of like a normal shaped sugar push. However, it's on the back end of this that something different is happening.
The hesitation is so much more extreme in slow motion.
Uh-huh.
I love it.
So coming in like normal. And now here we're kind of transitioning. So if you look at Sarah, watch what's happening with her pitch, because you'll see she goes from that forward pitch leaning in to upright to back. And then she actually kind of changes it again when she'll come back in and compress a little bit. So we have her forward. She's still slightly forward, but she's coming up. But right there, you can see she's then that angle. She's pressing into his hand more. And then he's taking that, and you can see he is sending that arm back. You can see her shoulder is moving before the rest of her body, which tells me that she's connecting in.
Yeah, I just love how subtle it is, the transition, because and this is a little harder to determine without explicitly talking to them about this moment, because there is a redirection of the compression here. But maintaining compression through that moment is very difficult. And my guess is that transition to tension, just for a split second, not an extreme amount of tension. And then because of the way Kyle's right side is drawing through right there, I think Sarah is actually the one creating that movement of his right foot. And so he's actually resisting the release of his arm. And as he's moving into that position, he's lowering the handhold ever so slightly and bringing his right elbow back past his center as he continues his right foot forward. And that is what's encouraging Sarah to go back into compression.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. And so then the rest of this is playing in the compression and just kind of riding the wave of it. So it's not constant compression. It's right. Shaping and it's changing with the timing of the rhythm of the music. So compression releases. There's a momentary bit of tension, and then Kyle asks for compression again. And then they play in that compression as Sarah continues to scroll backwards.
And you can see that change in pitch she has.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. You can see you can see how the change of pitch is like really lining up with where his arm is at, and because he is extending out. But then once he changes that and lets her draw out, you can really see that upright change.
Yeah, and then when it changes back into tension at the end is when Kyle actually starts extending his frame. So like right here, they're still in compression, but as soon as he starts extending that hand, this is tension again.
And I would say that part of the reason that he did it that way is because he hit kind of that max extension for where he's at. Like he's at quite an angle. And so he doesn't really have much other choice. He can move forward, but that would be kind of coming out of the shape that he has, and it would be a little bit awkward.
Yeah.
But the other option, obviously, is to change it and let her draw out.
And then a detail for leaders trying to learn how to do this kind of technique is really paying attention. We had an episode on this, elbow magic. I'll link to it above. I've become a YouTuber, I'm sorry. But as he goes into this shape, his right elbow is very close to his side. So he has a lot of rope to reel out. So that means he has a lot of time to actually lead an anchor on time for her.
Yep.
So if he were in this shape at full extension, she'd come back regardless of whether or not they're on time. But because he has all this rope to reel out, he can control the timing of it and give her a correctly timed rock and go.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I was just going to say, my guess with that is that had he been more stretched out to begin with, like had his arm not been so close to him, he probably would have made a different choice with shaping and how to get her out of that position she's in.
Yep. Here's the next one, and I put the bookmark a little ahead of the beginning of the pattern so you can see the context of Sarah's rotation moving into it, because her one might look a little wonky if you didn't know where she just came from.
So this one's really interesting. Cassie and I were having a conversation about it yesterday and today.
Yep.
It's interesting to see what's happening. And because of the angle that they're at, it's a little bit harder to kind of tell, but you can see that as they're coming in, the arm for Sarah is coming in and then drawing out. So her frame has been widened, and you can see that Kyle is also, he's like winging his elbows out.
Yeah, so they come into it kind of as if it's going to be a click-clack, based on the way Kyle is stepping onto his right foot and catching her left hand with his right. But you can see right now, all of their elbows are pointing toward the floor.
Yeah.
But Sarah's arms are fully extended at this point, so she doesn't kind of have any more range of motion to push away from her. So it kind of has to either all be on Kyle, or that cushion needs to happen through a different range of motion. So what we were hypothesizing is that chicken wing out. So you can see now how Kyle's elbow is actually pointed at us in the camera. It's no longer pointed down into the floor. And similarly, Sarah's elbows are no longer pointed down at the floor. They're pointed towards the walls. And it's that little rotation in Sarah's shoulders that's allowing for the cushion of the impact. And then it also is allowing Kyle to widen her frame.
Yeah.
And also widen his to be able to play in a more lateral form of compression. And then for this anchor here, he drops his elbows, which drops Sarah's, which brings them back to neutral to go into a different pattern.
Right. And, that would not have been something that happened had he not stopped his body from moving down line. Had he kept going, it probably would have looked quite a bit different.
And then I will say, it can be dangerous to rotate a follow's frame too far. So if you go past the walls and the follow's elbows are trending towards the corner of the ceiling, you've gone too far. So the more you know, we say, don't hurt anyone. And then tall follow public service announcement. This is something that happens to me a lot, is that the leaders ask for compression too low relative to my waist. And that forces me to have a fully extended arm like Sarah has right now. And in this context, it's fine. They know what they're doing. They're doing this on purpose. But if that's your basic, if you are not cushioning the impact of the compression in your sugar push, until a follow's arm is already fully extended, like they're trying to catch up with you and they can't, it's going to end up in some wonky things. I personally just completely disconnect from leaders that ask me to do that at this point because it's dangerous for me to connect with them. But then that means we're no longer partnering each other.
Right.
So something to be aware of as leaders is like, you want to make sure that the follow has some cushion room in their own arms. And if you're asking them to be fully extended into compression, they're more likely to disconnect from you on purpose to protect themselves.
Yeah.
And that might be the reason why you don't have the ability to play inside of a sugar push like this, the way Kyle and Sarah do. All right, shall we move on to the next one?
Sure.
The sugar push that could have been.
Yep.
Yeah, thought it was a sugar push, but no.
Just kidding. So we're starting out like a normal sugar push might. So he's changing into the right hand. And I will say that doing that is transitioning them into more of a neutral connection. So she's not like really compressing into him before he continues moving backwards. Because had she really started compressing in right here, she probably would have tripped over herself, something, you know?
Yeah.
Nothing good would have happened.
No. Yeah, he times it just right. So that feeling of cushioning the impact of the initial part of compression, that gentleness, he takes that feeling and that exact moment and then maintains that cushion, which has less force to it and allows Sarah to have a more fluid frame to follow through with what he then leads afterwards. So he makes contact. He's cushioning the impact because you can tell by the way she's prepped, kind of like her upper body rotated to the left a little bit. She's got contra body going on. She's ready to really push into a shape. But he cushions her and then he maintains the integrity of the feeling of the cushion.
Yeah.
And then travels with it. So she has to keep going to meet it. And then he takes it into tension to prep that turn.
Yep.
And this is, tell me if your experience has been different, but like we were talking about earlier, it's very normal for leaders to think, oh, I have to absorb the impact. And then they cushion it, but then they completely dissolve the connection altogether. And then you're like, I see you there, but I don't feel you there.
Yep.
It's very uncanny and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We like having something to run into. It's great.
Yeah.
Leaders, if you often experience your follow doing one-handed sugar pushes with you and compressing off of your chest, it might be because you're not stopping them with your hand.
Yeah.
The more you know. Anyway. The way she, because she has a very set, well, I guess engaged frame through this part.
Yeah.
The way she kind of there's like this moment, this chink of release into the contra body, like right there. You can see her right shoulder. She's like in tension. She's ready for her muscles are in tension, not like stretch connection, but you can see right here that it relaxes right after this frame. And to shape into that prep, and it's just so good.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Yeah.
Love you, Sarah.
And the other thing I wanted to note is that when they're changing that hand, not only is he like lightly cushioning and kind of leaving it there, but you can see he's kind of moving it a little bit. So it's not like he's keeping it in the same spot as if he wanted to, keep her in the same position.
Onward.
Right.
The classic Kyle, is this really what I wanted to do face?
Yep.
But the answer is yes, yes. This is always what you wanted to do because this is fun and glorious. And
I
wish I
love
were as
this
short as
moment.
Sarah.
I love this moment where Sarah just has her arms like fully extended. It's great. But so talking about what's happening here, you can see that Kyle he's bringing the arm around so that his palm is facing her. Right, so right here, he has that elbow really far out because he's wanting that hand to face her.
And he can see the back of his hand. His thumb is pointed down.
Yeah. So right here, there's a tiny bit of compression because there needs to be a redirect. And so you have to have a little bit of something to be able to send it. But what he's doing for that is you can see he's kind of like pinching right up by her neck when they first come into that. So right here, he's kind of pinching. You can see his palm is up. And then what's happening is he is rolling that back down to the bottom of his palm in order to like rotate her to initiate.
Mm-hmm. And for him, it's more about initiating the rotation and then creating the space for her. And then she's choosing to follow through with the shape of her head, which is, the benefit of having such a height difference in the partnership. Not everyone can do this. And then I love, because we're talking about using compression as a redirection, and why this is still a push break is because it has the 3 and 4 redirection.
Yep.
It has a swung redirection. Back to the swing content jokes, but it's the truth, people.
I love how Kyle's face goes from to, okay, that was fine.
Yep.
But yeah, so I do want to say, like, he's not really doing a lot of pushing to redirect her. It's more that he's rolling back down that palm.
Yeah, Sarah is the one who's maintaining the integrity of that rhythm more so than Kyle at this point.
Yeah,
which is something like I really appreciate about her, because like it's just so good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Just gonna go through this part again. Make that a boomerang.
Yep.
All right.
Because of like he's bringing her in like a normal sugar push, he's being very intentional about like showing that something's happening with that arm that's different. So she knows that this is not going to be normal sugar push of sorts. So just him being very like really large about the movement that he's doing to signal that something different is going to happen.
Yep.
Anyways, that was the last thing.
That is like super important. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about
Mm-hmm.
his leading in particular, because he does so many unique variations of things.
Right.
But you can always, they flow so naturally because he preps them so well, not only to
Mm-hmm.
lead them well, but just using the physics
Right.
so it just naturally flows properly. It's excellent.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like he could have gone into that without having that arm so like shaped.
Mm-hmm.
Like he could have kind of gone into it with more of a dropped elbow and then moved his arm into it.
Yeah.
But because he is like really bringing that up, she's knowing ahead of time to expect something different.
Yep. Then I want to point out that he initiates the turn, but
Mm-hmm.
then like right here, his hand doesn't really travel through space anymore.
No.
Like his hand's not going anywhere through these frames.
Yep.
That's like really important because he is basically the extension of her center axis at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So if he were to move, she would
Well,
not be happy.
the rest of him is moving. However, not that
Yeah,
arm.
yeah, the arm. That's what I meant. Yeah, do not move a follow's center axis when they're neck rolling. I will find you, and I will have very ungenerous things to say. Anyways, here's another one where I wanted to give a little context before the sugar
Mm-hmm.
push because it's such a extreme variation of the
Yeah.
angle before. All the things.
Yeah.
Oh, to be that short.
So I will say that the transition here is like not the smoothest that it could be. But that's because of how Sarah's falling forward because she's really committed into that left hand. And then he's moving that right hand. So that was kind of, a little bit more stable as she's pressing in, which is why she's shaped open. So you can see she's really shaping the left hand. Right hand is there. It's a little bit compressed, but not the majority of it. But he then moves it back, creating like extra movement for her because she was on this balanced point. She takes a step right here and doesn't take any others. But him moving that hand rotates her upper body now. It was going from being open to facing him. And you can kind of see that Sarah disconnects a little bit, like her arms from the rest of her body.
Mm-hmm.
Not extensively, but ever so slightly, right about
There.
here.
Yeah, because she's ready. It looks like to me she's ready to really plank forward and almost do one of those Argentine tango style, draw
Yeah.
her free foot through towards
Mm-hmm.
him and just be planking from her left foot into the ground all the way through her fingertips.
Yeah.
And she's ready for that. But he is redirecting her upper body back to her right. And so she suddenly kind of disengages the connection between her hips and
Mm-hmm.
her shoulders. It's like
Yep.
a very, very sudden resisted release,
Yep.
which is allowing her right foot to fall underneath her so she can
Mm-hmm.
turn comfortably to her right.
Yeah. And that little that disengagement to her kind of falling forward into that right foot is what makes it a little bit less smooth than it could possibly be.
Yeah.
But that is because she wants to stay up over her own feet.
Yep. I
Once she
that
sees that he's
choice.
rotating.
I agree with this decision. If in a perfect world, or I guess what I would have tried to have created if I were in this situation was I would
Mhm.
have tried to have kept Sarah's center more over her left foot
Yeah,
so she could have
just
flicked.
rotate on that.
Yeah, just rotated to the right on her left foot and had like
Mhm.
another Argentine tango like cicada style
Yeah.
motion with her right leg. That would have been really cool.
Mhm.
uh, Understanding how to visually read where a follow's weight is and where their axis is at any given time is a really important skill
Yeah.
as a leader, because you combine that with a really nuanced feel in the connection, and follows will love you. I can attest to
Yeah.
this because
Yeah.
I mean, I know a fair amount of patterns, but in reality, I only dance like, I don't know, 10% of the patterns I know on any given night. And I I
Mhm.
am loved. I have to run away sometimes. Be like, no, I'm following to this one. Go away. No, anyways.
So this one's interesting. They're all interesting, but
Oh, great. Because they're all just like, they're push breaks, but they're cool.
yeah.
It's fun.
So the interesting thing right here is that you can see Kyle gets into this position and he's just straightening up to lead her forward.
Mm-hmm.
He's not moving back down line. Like he is planting the foot, and because the upper body is so pitched forward rather than moving back, he's just straightening up and
Mm-hmm.
keeping that arm engaged.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things that you can think about for that kind of redirection, because he's using the equal and opposite, and he's using the center counterpoint of that right hand. So he's moving away from it as she's moving away from it. So instead of moving towards her down the line, he's not going this way, he's going this way. But he's using the same kind of natural reaction to compression that happens in the timing of West Coast swing, because it has a natural crest to it that wants to resolve equal and opposite out the other side. And he's just using that energy and riding it.
Yeah.
Which is another thing that I really appreciate about Kyle's dancing, is how excellent he is at just riding the wave. He's like the
Yeah.
surfer of West Coast swing. Why have I never thought of that before? But it's true. And then there aren't really enough like super basic push breaks in this dance to analyze. But another
Right.
thing that can happen is a very subtle height change in a basic sugar push. So you'll bring a follow in and your hand holds at this height, but then there's a very slight arc over here that goes down ever so slightly, and then it goes back out like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it arcs down a little bit through that three and into the four.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that arc that helps resolve the energy instead
Yeah.
of just thinking going straight in, straight out. That
Mm-hmm.
actually requires more energy and more muscle control than
Yeah.
just allowing the natural arc resolution.
Mm-hmm.
Yay. I need to learn more physics terms. I bet angular momentum is involved, but I don't know enough about that particular concept to wax poetic about it yet. Keyword, yet. It's coming someday. Anyways, last one.
So we have the sugar push that turns into a grapevine of sorts. What we're seeing here is he's bringing him in, and then you can kind of see ever so slightly there's a rotation of his body happening, but then B, there's a slight widening of the elbows in order to dissipate a little bit of the energy to redirect it.
Yep, right there.
Mm-hmm.
Because to create that very subtle shift, so the redirection happens at an angle instead of right back where it came from, a wider frame is much easier for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, actually, I'm glad I just talked about that arc of the momentum,
Yeah.
because on a standard sugar push, I'm gonna bring that drawing back. Standard sugar push, follow comes in, there's an arc, and then it goes back up. Here, however, it's staying on the same level, so the height of the handhold isn't changing. However, this is happening from a bird's eye view. So you're still having that arc, but it's happening parallel to the floor instead of changing height.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it right here. The hands move laterally.
Yeah. And, that's something that needs to be happening with pretty much every redirect. Like, you don't want to just bring in and then push out, right?
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be a little bit of energy dissipation before you can redirect it.
Yep.
Otherwise, you just get like a very hard, like, you have run into a brick wall and now you can go now.
Yes. Follows are not crash test dummies. We sometimes feel like we are.
Yeah.
But we are not.
Occasionally.
Hopefully we can have Sarah on, both Sarah and Kyle on eventually in the future. But I know I'd love to talk to Sarah about how seamlessly she transitions between a frame that is 100% leadable to one that ever so slightly not disconnects, but dissociates from her lower body just enough that she can still follow, but she is 100% in control of the timing of what she's doing.
Yep.
Because we've seen her do that several times in this dance. But it happens again here as Kyle draws her left hand across her face for her to turn to her right.
Mm-hmm.
And the way she handles the timing of that in her feet is 100% up to her. And it's excellent.
Yeah. And, part of that, you can see once he redirects her, neither of them have too terribly much like pitch one way or the other.
I'll get there eventually. Please hold. Click, click, click.
So rather than there being a lot of inward compression, we're in a more neutral state.
Mm-hmm.
And any compression is happening more from the side, side to side, once we get to that redirected position.
Mm-hmm. Cool. We'll let Kyle and Sarah bow for us tonight. I'm just full of bad jokes. But anyways, any comments, questions, concerns, bad jokes? For those of you who haven't joined us live before, we like hearing bad jokes too. So
Yeah.
Feel free to share.
Sorry, I was late because I enjoyed the feedback about what you guys are actually looking for from the leaders and some of the stuff too, especially since I'm just getting back into the whole thing again too. So I appreciate this kind of stuff. Lord knows I want to be a better leader, that's for sure.
Well, thank you. We're glad you appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, ladies.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you. Hope we do it again. I liked it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll be back next Thursday, and I think we're talking about rolling through the feet.
We are
next week. Yeah, and you can catch all of our replays on our YouTube channel.
Thanks for joining us tonight, guys.
Yeah, thank you, and we'll be back next week, same time. Who knows if I pointed on the correct side of the screen? We'll find out in post. It'll be exciting. On this computer, I have to remember how to do all of this.
It's been a couple weeks.
Oh my god, you can see Jordan's teeth from outer space. Anyways, I love Sarah's signature, like sticking her tongue out.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm a dancer who sticks my tongue out, but I know I don't look as cute as she does. I look crazy. Anyways. Once again, I instructed for my boyfriend to keep it down. He's playing Fall Guys.
That worked well.
Yeah, the door is closed. There are walls in between me and him, and I have a sad little microphone on my earbuds, but
not good enough.
I am sorry, world. I'm losing my smart words as we go on. I am clearly out of practice at this. That is okay. Every time the song Heard It Through the Grapevine is played in a competition, especially a heated format, I don't know about you, I wait for the chorus and I hear, I heard it through the grapevine, and not a single one of the 20 couples is grapevining, and it just gets me in the soul every single time. I don't know about you, because every time I dance to that song, I put in a freaking grapevine.
Right?
Anyways, tangent.
And you.